go. Well, welcome everybody. Here we have another interview related to crisis management at a time of severe crisis, as in COVID-19. This series of interviews is sponsored by the SIMDFW Fellows, which is an organization or a group of SIMDFW members that have been recognized for their contributions and years of service to both the DFW chapter of SIM as well as SIM National. The idea is for us to share personal stories for an interviewee to share personal stories that, we can draw lessons from at this time of incredible uncertainty and time of crisis that COVID-19 has created for a lot of us. The idea is that these interviews are going to be informative to both SIM members as well as students. So having said that, first of all, my name is Ulricke Schultze, and I am also a SIM fellow. And I am an associate professor here at Southern Methodist University in the ITOM department. And I'm very pleased to introduce and talk to Caren Shiozaki, who is the Executive Vice President and Chief Information Officer of TMST, a mortgage company based in Santa Fe. Prior to taking this position in Santa Fe, Caren was the Vice President and CIO for the BELO Corporation here in Dallas. And this was the time when BELO, was still the owner of market-leading TV stations and newspapers, cable and interactive media assets across the country. And prior to that, she, was in the finance space with both technology and business roles at American Express and Bank of America. Currently, she is not only a SIMDFW fellow, but she is also a member of the Arizona SIM chapter and chair emeritus of the SIM National Board. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to you, Caren. First of all, thank you for participating in this interview, and I really look forward to learning about a time of crisis that you have had to manage and what we might learn from that crisis. But where I wanted to start off was to get a sense of how COVID-19 is affecting your organization and your work currently.
Well, actually, we're actually in pretty good shape. My company is currently in bankruptcy, and that has actually turned out to be quite a blessing for us because I don't have to worry about the day-to-day, making sure the customers are taken care of or whatever. My customers are actually my attorneys that I work with on all the different lawsuits. So other than an initial delay in getting some equipment, we're fairly well positioned because for a long time now, we've been set up to handle flexible workforce locations. And because of the nature of the litigation I'm involved in involving different federal agencies, we really did have a good handle on business continuity management because I have to prove that to them.
Right.
And right now, because of a lot of work that I have to currently involves federal courts, they're pretty much closed down. And that's sort of been a blessing because it allows me to catch up on a lot of things that had to get pushed to the side. Now, majority of my team are based in Phoenix, and I was used to seeing them in person on a monthly basis, and obviously that's not happening right now. We're still working on some key infrastructure projects. Those have not been put on hold, so I'm still in touch with them quite often by the phone or video conference. And I think basically they're doing fairly well from a functional perspective. I am more concerned about the emotional toll that the pandemic and this whole self-isolation situation has taken on them. So I spend a lot of cycles making sure that the team are emotionally taken care of.
Has there ever been a crisis before that you felt had this kind of high emotional aspect or component to it?
Well, to be honest, this pandemic is different from anything else I've ever had to deal with, both personally and professionally. I mean, in my career, I've worked on some big crises situations. I dealt with 9/11, I dealt with SARS, I dealt with Hurricane Katrina, and then of course the Great Recession. Now, each of them definitely resulted in a level of societal and economic damage, but not on the massive scale that we're seeing now in such a short period of time.
Mhm.
And I think what's different now is, I mean, listen, with all those other situations, you could see a path to the other side. And there's, though things were enormous in terms of, you know, how bad they were, there was a sort of a timeline you could envision, right?
Mhm.
Now with COVID-19, this is like an alien invasion. I mean, there's fear because there's just so much that we don't know. We're isolated, and yet the world around us is in this constant state of flux. And just when you think you know what the path to the other side is going to be, something pops up and it changes the landscape again, and you get thrown back into this emotional turmoil.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah. You said that you've managed, managed through a number of major crises. Is there one in particular that you might be able to tell us about, and what happened and how you dealt with that crisis?
I would have to say, well, Hurricane Katrina, because that has a definite impact to what I did when I was in Dallas, because I was working for Belo at the time. And I don't, for people that don't realize it, Belo owned a TV station, WWL, in New Orleans.
Okay.
We were the only TV station that could stay on the air. Everybody else around us went down. And a lot of that was due in part to my engineer of broadcasting, Craig Harper, who had been with Belo for a number of years. And before I even joined the company, he actually had the foresight to build their TV transmission facility to withstand a Cat 5 hurricane.
Wow.
And as a result, I think, I remember him telling me how he had to fight for it because it cost quite a bit of money. But knowing the weather patterns of what happens in New Orleans, he said, no, it's got to be a Cat 5 resistant facility. And sure enough, as a result of that, it paid off because we were the only ones that were able to stay on the air. Now, of course, we had people in the TV station there that we worried about, but we were, the nice thing about Belo at the time I was there, they were also very community minded. So they cared about what was happening in the community. And I recall how the whole Belo Nation pulled together. We could orchestrate the news choppers from Houston, from Dallas, to go and help ferry in goods to what was needed to help out different organizations and to help out our own staff.
Right.
So you would see people galvanized in a common mission for a common good. And I thought that was very inspiring. And that was, that was actually one of the highlights of my working with the company, I think.
And so what from your role what were some of the key challenges that you faced with regard to this particular crisis? I mean, what were some, besides the people that you needed to take care of, what were some of the IT related issues, for example, that you recall having to sort of deal with, and challenges related to that?
Making sure we could switch the broadcast over. We had our TV station there, but then eventually our TV station in downtown New Orleans flooded.
Oh,
So
wow.
we had to, so we had reciprocal agreements with LSU so that we got kind of moved all the broadcast people up there to hook up our transmission tower.
Right.
Trying to get extra, I think, now if I remember correctly, the satellite trucks, I believe we, at the time, we had to pull satellite trucks from Houston also because I think one of our trucks in New Orleans might have been knocked out of commission.
Right.
So it was trying to do all that. And in the meantime, just the basic IT infrastructure, making sure that the New Orleans staff from wherever they were located could still hook into our systems, get email, hook into all the different communication systems that we had.
Right. So basically making all these unusual ad hoc fixes, right, in order to get stuff done and to keep the operations running, right? That sort of being the crux of the crisis. Right. And so what were some of the lessons of this, this particular crisis for you that you feel could help somebody who's currently facing, the COVID-19 crisis in a very particular way?
Well, I'm tackling this pandemic with the four same fundamentals that got me through all the other crises. And as a leader, your first priority has to be your team. I mean, they're going to be looking to you for cues on how to react. So you've got to be calm, you've got to be purposeful, and you have to be optimistic, but optimistic with a dose of realism, because they're going to know when you're fake, right?
Right.
And then I found, especially in this, most of all, I have to be kind.
Right.
Empathy is really the key, because it's really what they need from you. And I found that's more so now, given the crisis we're facing with this virus. So for example, I had a team member that was all of a sudden missing conference calls and anything that was scheduled before 10 a.m. or after 3 p.m. And some of the team members started to complain about, what a slacker this person was now that they're working from home.
Right.
Well, as it turns out, this person is a single parent who now has 2 young kids that have to be homeschooled. We've also had a situation where some people weren't just showing up when they were supposed to show up. And it turns out that a couple of them had family members who had contracted the disease.
Right.
And for another one, their parents had lost their jobs, and now money was a real worry.
Right.
And so I think right now it's very, very important. Do not assume the worst of people, especially now.
Right. Right.
The second thing is to actively communicate and tell the plain, honest truth, even if that means admitting that I don't have the answers, even if it means admitting that, this is stressing me out too.
Right.
And a lot of, especially now, they're kind of saying, well, what do you think's going to happen? I just don't speculate. I can't. And I tell them, I just can't. It wouldn't be right to speculate. Now, also in crisis situations, I think the other thing is it's really easy to retreat in the day-to-day weeds of what's going on. And I always have to remember the role of the C-suite and the board is that you have to stay strategically focused on the big picture, right? So yes, I can figure out, yes, I'm concerned about what happens day to day, but I have competent people that I trust, and that's why they're there, so that I can stay and focus on the big picture and try and look ahead at what's coming next. And then finally, I think the fourth thing is self-care, because I think you really have to take care of yourself so that you can be there to take care of your team. Right. And so I'm sticking to my workout routine, and I do get dressed for work every morning. There's no sweatpants, there's no jeans. And I think I'm doing pretty good about not overindulging on comfort food as much as I like it. So maybe I just eat half the pint of Haagen-Dazs at one sitting instead of the whole pint.
But I love that list you just put together in terms of, the 4 principles. So the first one, be a mensch, right? I mean, in terms of, being kind and being approachable and holding the team together, prioritizing the team. That as I think, at a time of crisis, that really resonates very, very well. And then, of course, the focus needs to stay sort of not, and staying calm, right, as part of this, that, the focus on the future, focus on strategy, the calmness of it, that this is all about going on, right, sort of going to the next stage, going to the next level. And, that as a really important aspect to this. And self-care, right, I think also is something that by and large we don't necessarily think about on a daily basis. It's like, well, that's your private business, and you've got to be professional sort of at the, once you're at work and are doing work. But that right now things really are affecting, the emotional toll this is taking, I think cannot be underestimated. And so I really like that list. Any other thoughts in terms of managing crises, and any other advice or lessons that you feel you'd like to share with people who are struggling through this right now?
I think at the beginning I mentioned that I thought we were relatively okay because we had business continuity management in hand. And our approach to BCM is not to base it on an intractable plan of a bunch of predefined steps, because, as we all know, no battle plan survives contact with the enemy, right? So instead, the way I've approached BCM for my company is I use that plan to help me establish the priorities for crisis response. And then I let others who are more knowledgeable than me actually design the solutions that address those priorities. So you should think about your plan as more of a framework that outlines more of a mindset and the types of behaviors that will help you respond thoughtfully to all the different crisis fires that are popping up. And at the same time, they let you kind of continue to be able to look ahead to what comes next.
Right.
And so, because I, in talking to some of my peers, like, well, they said, well, we have the plan and it's a 400-page document. And it's like, but now something happened and I don't know what to do. And that's just it. You approach your plan a little bit differently, not as a cookbook of, you know, check, 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 check.
Right, right. And I guess that's also boils down to what's the definition of a crisis, right? I mean, a crisis by and large being that unpredictable and that a checklist approach most probably is never going to be complete. So how can you think about it differently that you have a better shot, right? And maybe it is about attitude, you know, a lot of it to actually deal with the crisis. But I think that's what you so nicely illustrated with your 4 points earlier on. So thank you again.
Well,
all right.
You know, well, and I was going to say, in those fundamentals, it not only applies to a crisis plan for the business, but think about for what you do for yourself. You should be able to kind of come up with that framework, but understand that something's going to come out of left field that you're going to have to deal with that you didn't think of before.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I really enjoyed talking to you about this, Caren, and learned a lot. So thank you very much for your time and for your openness about your experience and sharing your insights about how to manage crises. And good luck with the COVID-19 carrying on.
Yes, thank you. Thanks for the opportunity.
Okay, thank you. All right, bye-bye.